Welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. Today I am reviewing The Wastelands. This is book 3 of the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. And I'm going to start with some spoiler-free general observations about The Wastelands and the Dark Tower series thus far. I will get into some spoilers later in the video. I'll give you a signal when that happens, but I'll be talking about the characters and some big moments in the story. But yes, I will definitely let you know when that happens. Also, I want to mention that very soon I'm going to be having a discussion with some of my fellow booktubers. This is something I'm very excited about. It's all lined up, ready to go. I'll be talking with Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, who is the #1 Stephen King fan out there, and also Sarah from Sarah Reads, who is incredibly insightful and a big Stephen King fan as well, and Chaz from Bookish Chaz. So we're going to have a great time talking about the first 3 books of the Dark Tower series. So stay tuned for that. But for now, I want to talk about The Wastelands, which is a book that I enjoyed tremendously, just as I enjoyed books 1 and 2. In fact, in many ways, I think The Wasteland combines the very best of books 1 and 2. We have a more sustained story. We are left in a bit of a lurch, a bit of a cliffhanger at the end, and we know that the series is really getting rolling now with The Wastelands. In contrast to the first 2 books, which almost could be read as standalones, I think. But yeah, so things are really getting going here. It's just a tremendous, tremendous book. There's nothing that I know of like the Dark Tower series so far. It has absolutely surprised me in the best ways possible. And one of the things I want to talk about is the relationship that this series and The Wastelands in particular has with some of the other literature. There's a lot of great nods in here. Just as I mentioned in my review of The Gunslinger, that the Dark Tower series takes some inspiration from the poem Childe Roland to the Dark Tower Came by Robert Browning. There is an allusion here in the very title of this book, The Wastelands, to the famous poem by T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland. And this is a poem that is very, very, there are some very obvious nods, not just in the title here on the front, but in the 2 books that King divides this into. You have book 1 called Jake, and it's called, there's a sort of subtitle here, Fear and a Handful of Dust. And that is a quote from The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. And this is divided into 3 sections. Book 1 has Bear and Bone, Key and Rose, Door and Demon. And then you'll know what those mean when you read the book. Those are actually kind of nice markers to help you figure out, okay, what did I just read? Oh yeah, this was Bear and Bone. And then there's book 2, which is called Lud. And it is the subtitle, A Heap of Broken Images. The subtitle is also a quote from The Wastelands by T.S. Eliot. And then you have this divided into 3 sections as well, Town and Quartet, Bridge and City, Riddle and Wastelands. So those sub-books and subtitles in there, those are big hints to the theme of The Wastelands and the Dark Tower in general. I actually want to quote this excerpt from T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, because I think it does shed some light on what Stephen King is doing in the book The Wastelands. So I'm going to quote the bit that those 2 quotations came from for his subsections there. And this is from section 1 of The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. Section 1 is called The Burial of the Dead, and that alone is also a very big clue, thematically speaking. But let me just read this quick thing here. A little excerpt from The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. What are the roots that clutch? What branches grow out of this stony rubbish? Son of man, you cannot say or guess, for you know only a heap of broken images. Where the sun beats and the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water. Only there is shadow under this red rock. Come in under the shadow of this red rock, and I will show you something different from either your shadow at morning striding behind you, or your shadow at evening rising to meet you. I will show you fear in a handful of dust. So those two little snippets are in this section of The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. You can kind of get a feel for the tone of that poem by Eliot. And it is very, very much related to The Wastelands by Stephen King. And in terms of the deadness of it, in terms of the otherworldliness of it, in terms of the dislocation, in terms of the fragmentation. And these two quotes are very much signifiers here for us. When you have fear in a handful of dust, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, this is obviously alluding to death. And this is from the burial of the dead part of the T.S. Eliot poem. So death is obviously a very prominent part. This is a world that is dying. This is a world that has moved on, right? And also there is the idea of fragmentation when you have a heap of broken images. So T.S. Eliot wrote The Wasteland after World War II. In 1922, I think it was published. And it is a world in which the things which used to make sense, the things that that people used to believe in, that used to give life meaning, that used to give coherence to the experience of life, these things had really been called into question, and in some cases had just been blasted to bits. So this is a big part of what is happening as well in Stephen King's The Wastelands. Very important that he is giving this nod to T.S. Eliot here. So the idea of fragmentation being maybe the most important theme, or certainly one of the most important ones in this book 3 of the Dark Tower series. And I'm sure it is a theme that will continue to be vastly important. You also have some allusions to some other authors in here, plenty. I'm going to mention just a couple. One is Jrr Tolkien, and if you know anything about the Dark Tower series, you know that it is Stephen King's response, in a way, to The Lord of the Rings. So this is a very important part of the Dark Tower series. The idea of the quest being in there. You also have in The Wastelands a very specific mentioning of Tolkien. One of the characters, Susanna, has read The Lord of the Rings, so I think that is so cool that he inserted that in there. But you also have a tribute to Tolkien in the fact that you have a riddling contest that takes place in The Wastelands, and it takes place with or against a very dangerous divided personality. I will say no more for the moment because we are in the non-spoilers, but that is a very nice tribute, a nice tip of the hat to Tolkien in there by Stephen King. But this is by no means, and if you've read The Dark Tower, it is quite different from Lord of the Rings. As I was saying, that otherworldliness, that fragmentation, that dislocation, this is a world that in some ways mirrors ours, but it is a very broken mirror. And there are some things that are just very different as well. So the other author I just wanted to mention who is obviously given a nod in here is Richard Adams, author of Watership Down, which is alluded to with the bunny rabbits, but also Shardik the bear. So that is a big part of this as well. So Stephen King obviously loves his allusions. And he also even, I'm pretty sure, is alluding to a lot of his own books in the Dark Tower. So I wouldn't know about all those allusions. I get the sense that I'm getting allusions here and there, but since I have not read anything else by Stephen King, that's going over my head for the moment. So so hopefully I will cure that someday, and I will read some more Stephen King for sure, probably starting with The Stand after I finish Dark Tower. But yeah, so there's just a lot of really nice, I have the feeling there might be some Easter eggs in here I'm also missing, but you know, that's fine. I am loving Dark Tower enough without having to get all those Easter eggs, but just wanted to mention that because thematically some of these are really very important. They're not just thrown in randomly. There's some really great nods here that are telling us what King is up to. So in addition to this, I want to go back to that fragmentation idea because what you have here, you know, fragmentation, parts of the whole. You have fragmented worlds. The world that we are in is fragmented. You have lots of different worlds that are all somehow or other fragments and are connected to this dark tower, this mysterious dark tower, and something has happened, some cataclysmic event, and it is focused on this dark tower. And this is why the world has moved on. So this idea that we are looking for meaning and it is not there, it might be there in this quest. It might be there in this quest. We're not sure what we're going to get. I'm not sure what we're going to get at that Dark Tower. I am really more and more curious. Every book I read, I'm more and more curious to see what I'm going to find there. But we'll be patient for that. In the meantime, though, there are hints of meaning in concepts like ka, which is like karma, perhaps. And there's katet, which is simply, and this is not really a spoiler, but a katet is one way of explaining it is to say that it's a group of people brought together by fate. And so there is an idea of fate. So if there is fate and there is ka and there's katet, there has to be maybe some meaning somewhere along the line. There's even this thing called the beam, and there are various beams, and they all point to the same place, this Dark Tower thing. So while the world is falling apart, while time is getting stretched, while all kinds of indications are that things are falling apart, as another great poet put it, there might be some elusive hints of meaning in here as well. And this is, as much as anything else, from what I can see, what Roland of Gilead is after. So the atmosphere is very much related to this fragmentation, to this dislocation. The atmosphere, there's a lack of coherence. It's a very dreamlike or nightmarish quality to these books that I really am enjoying. A randomness, a quirkiness to them, unlike anything you'll find, really. And very fittingly, a lack of respect for genre boundaries as well. That really fits with all the fragmentation and stuff. I mean, this one is... It's got horror, it's got sci-fi, it's got fantasy, just like I've said before in the other reviews, but it feels like it's even more intense, the melange of genres in here. So, and I love that King is just doing his own thing. So I'm getting a sense, too, for King's style more and more with each book and really enjoying it. And he talks a lot in here about the drawers and the wasteland and places that are eerily familiar in a nightmarish kind of way, places that have lost their meaning, and not just on a physical level, but on a spiritual level as well. So places where there has been much destruction. So this is something that looms large in the human psyche, and he really does a great job kind of plugging into that here. So I'm looking forward to where he takes it. So I've been very general and vague so far, so now this is the part where I'm going to dive into some specific spoilers. So this is my warning to all of you if you haven't read The Wastelands yet. I'm going to be talking about characters and specific things here, so thank you for stopping by. So yeah, I'm going to start with Roland, obviously. He's our protagonist, and I have previously thought of him as a kind of an Ahab-like character who is just completely... to the exclusion of all else, focused on this quest, and very dangerously so. We saw that in The Gunslinger when he was willing to sacrifice Jake. Well, this sacrifice is something that comes back to him in a big way and in a compelling way here in The Wastelands. And the fact that he, in the Drawing of the Three, saved Jake in Jake's own world from... the serial killer guy. So Jake has experienced both death and not dying, and as a result, it's so interesting how Roland and Jake both, in their separate worlds, are experiencing a kind of split, and they have memories of both threads in time, if you will, of Jake dying and Jake not dying. So this is something that comes back to haunt Roland in a big way here in The Wastelands in a very compelling way. And it also is an opportunity for him to redeem himself from that willingness to sacrifice the boy to get to the Dark Tower in The Gunslinger. So it adds depth, in other words, to this character. It adds remorse to him. And it is, I think, a really wonderful way of fleshing him out. We see him having a sense of humor in here as well in his relationship, particularly with Eddie Dean, but also with Susanna. He is capable of tenderness, and he is capable of affection. So I love where The Wastelands has been taking Roland, who is a really, I think, one of the, probably, I'm sure by the time I'm done with the series, I'll be saying the same thing, but he seems like one of the most iconic characters in fantasy. So, in literature, heck, why not? Let's just say that. And then I mentioned them. You have Susanna and you have Eddie Dean, and I love their relationship. I love what they bring out in each other. I love that they're gunslingers now, and I love that they too have become invested in the quest for the Dark Tower. They bring some much needed humor to the story, and they also are a compelling part. What they bring to the adventures, the fact that it's Susanna's memories of the past in this world that are key at sometimes, and Eddie's dreams that are vital in retrieving Jake from his world and getting him to enter the world, just as they were drawn in the previous book, in the drawing of the three. Now they've got to get Jake through. He's got to have his rebirth, as it were. And so all the characters play a very crucial part in that, and I love it. Especially that scene, wow, that iconic scene where they do draw Jake into the world, his rebirth scene, where Jake has come to the mansion and he has encountered the guardian there that, whoa, this is horror stuff right here. And then within their world, they're trying to get Jake through, and they've got the key and they've got the door that Eddie has drawn in the ground, and it's raining and hailing, and there is this monster that possesses the stone ring that is now... it's in quite an embrace with Susanna. What a scene! Holy cow! And how they get Jake through with Susanna playing a very important role there in releasing the demon, the guardian spirit of the ring, to get sucked into the guardian in the mansion. Wow! I mean, that's just one hell of a scene. I mean, who can imagine stuff like that? So I thought that was fantastic, the way King wrote that scene. Obviously I've enjoyed the return of Jake a lot. I think that he has become much more alive, much more interesting than he was even in The Gunslinger. He's got more personality here, and I love that he was brought back. And this is a part of Roland's redemption. And a really fun part of it, I cannot not mention Oi. The Billy Bumbler. So I really enjoyed his part in this too. Maybe I'm just a sucker for animal companions. I don't know, but I just loved that part, and he brings a cuteness to the story. Now, of course, I'm going to be scared every book that Oi is going to die, so I don't know. But I'm glad he's there, and he's a lot of fun, and I love how intelligent he is, and also the relationship that buds immediately between him and Jake. It's very special. And there's just all this. There's Shardik, the bear. I mean, how epic and intense and weird can you get? And yet the whole, the people of River Crossing, I enjoyed them too, led by Aunt Talitha. That was a nice little respite for our protagonists. But the dystopian city of Lud, oh my goodness. I mean, that is right out of just the Devil's Nightmare. I mean, it's just crazy stuff. The stuff with Gasher. That is a character that I immediately, intensely did not like. And there was a moment there when I was very happy when Gasher says to Roland, "You," and Roland just says, "Me," and then boom. So very satisfying moment, I'm sure, for many readers. You have the TikTok man. There's some crazy characters in here. King really writes some imaginative stuff. And of course, how could I not mention Blaine the Mono? I mean, wow. I mean, that is quite an entity there. The intelligence that is behind, of course, the Mono is just the train, really. I mean, the real intelligence is in all that network of computers, and the split in the personality of Blaine the Mono, as you have the little Blaine and the big Blaine, and the whole interactions there with the protagonists. I mean, and the riddling contest with them at the end, as the city is getting poisoned. Just some crazy, crazy stuff. So Blaine the Mono, yeah, I mean, that I have met quite a character in that. So really happy to read this book. Just there's lots of these big moments, like I said, in the mansion and in the city of Lud, and stuff that just made me keep turning those pages. It's a pretty quick read, the Wasteland. So lots of fun. I love getting to know the concept of Ka and Ka-Tet and all the other stuff in there, and I am very, very, very intrigued and looking forward to continuing in the Dark Tower series. So those are my thoughts for now. I am really going to have a lot of fun, I'm sure, when I discuss this book and the previous two with my good friends, my fellow booktubers. So stay tuned for that, and until next time.